Good morning, everybody, and a big welcome to my guests. Oh, I've got to point the right way, that way. I wanted to come on live to finish off the year to talk about a subject that I have talked to lots of clients about and lots of members over the last year, and that is website building. And so I thought I would not do this alone. I would bring on two experts, Lisa, who is next to me, who builds websites for wellness business owners on Wix and WordPress, and Sammy from the Nutritional Palette, who is on the next panel, who builds websites again for wellness business owners, nutrition focused business owners on Squarespace and a new platform called ShowIt as well. So what we're going to do today is just go through a few questions that I see people are asking about websites. And if you're on live, please do join us in the chat. Please post comments. And if you've got any questions at all about building a website, if you've got one that you want to upgrade or it's not good enough, or you've got one that you've been fannying around with and it's still not live, you don't know how to get to that final hurdle, then please use the chat. Please use this half an hour that we're going to have together to pick our brains, collective brains, on getting websites live and what's the best thing to do and how to do that. And both Lisa and Sammy at the end will be able to share with you tips and ways that you could get help from them if you would need it. Lovely. Right. Okay. Why don't we start off then with Lisa? Do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit more than I've just explained? Tell people what you do. And I would love to hear from you what you think the advantages are and maybe disadvantages are of using something like Wix. Let's start with, because I know that's popular.
Okay, yeah, delighted to. Thanks for having me, Vicky. It's very exciting to be on StreamYard. Not done that before. So yeah, my name's Lisa Kent. I'm based down in Bournemouth on the south coast of the UK, and I've been a web designer now for about 7 years, and started with Wix and then moved on to WordPress. And that has been, quite a learning curve moving from one to the other. But the reason why I started with Wix, and actually that helps me to kind of tell you about the advantages and the disadvantages of that platform. So the reason why I chose it, first of all, is because it was really easy to get started. They had templates, it was drag and drop. There were things in there which reminded me of using things like Microsoft Word. So it was like editing the text. I thought, yeah, I recognize some of those symbols, that's easy. And it was one of the first really popular what you see is what you get platforms, which is why I thought that's perfect for me. And they do really help you. They take care of things like SEO. They give you prompts and guides with that now, which is really helpful. It's not something that they had in the beginning. And they also have everything in one place. So if you think about, you've got your domain name, email, and your hosting, they do all of that under the one umbrella of Wix. So that was why I thought it was a great place to start. And I can see why it's quite kind of like a great option for newbies in web design. But there's a big but with Wix, even though they look great. You can have websites that look great with Wix, don't get me wrong. But some of the disadvantages are, I found that if you don't have any design flair, they can really allow you to go to town with like bells and whistles galore. Buttons and this, that, and the other, and all of which don't match, and they'll quite happily let you do that.
I noticed that. I think my sister built her business website on Wix, and it would let you do the fonts in any size, in any different font. And I was like, but then you lose that consistency that you want to see, don't you, of the brand going through it?
You do. And so the things like, even with like font size hierarchies and things like that, which you get to learn about as a web designer, I just don't feel that Wix give you that guidance at all with making your site easy to read, easy to look at, even really. If you can stick with a template, all well and good, but I think people tend to go a bit off-piste and get a bit carried away. Now I can personally spot a Wix website a mile off as soon as I logged in. I'm like, oh, it's Wix, that's Wix. And also they also kind of quite they look quite cheap when you're starting and you're looking at all the different prices and stuff like that. They can appear that they've got really good deals, but those deals normally end. and you'll find that, you know, you're getting a new customer deal, but then next year it's going to be much more expensive. And also they seem to add on for everything. And they've got these things called apps, which might help you with taking bookings from clients or showing your calendar to clients. And or booking events even, they can help you with that. But all these things, these apps that they add on, they all cost money, and they're all by third-party suppliers. And actually there isn't usually that much choice. So that's not great for flexibility wise. But the biggest disadvantage of them all, unfortunately, is that when you build your site on Wix, you're tied in. So you cannot port your website from Wix anywhere else, because the platform just isn't built to allow that to happen. So I think it's really important when you're starting with something like that, you've got to think about, what am I going to want in the future? What if I fall out of love with Wix? What if their support isn't up to scratch?
Yeah.
How can I move forward? You could spend like 20, 30, 40 hours building a beautiful site on Wix, and then just the next year decide you don't like them anymore. But good luck trying to move away. You're tied in. So that's the non-portable side of it is really it for me. I really have to make sure you understand if you're getting into that. Yeah.
So for you then, WordPress felt like the next natural step and thing to move on to. So what are the advantages and disadvantages to people of WordPress then in comparison?
Yeah, so with WordPress, you're absolutely right. I kind of moved on, and I as I understood a little bit more about websites. So WordPress can actually be really cost effective as a DIYer, because a lot of the themes, so themes kind of, let's say templates you would call them, are actually free in WordPress, and that's a really good start actually. If you want to start with a simple theme, it's going to be free. WordPress itself is free, which is also a good bonus, and it's very, very widely used across the world. So say for instance you've built a site on WordPress and then you decide many years later you want to hand it over to a designer, you can do that because a lot of designers have experience with WordPress. So that's another good advantage of it. But it's fully customizable. So say for instance you've looked at somebody else's website and you think, oh my gosh, I love the way that image just slides in, and then like you can hover on that picture and it will, you know, change into that. The likelihood is that if you've seen that on somebody else's website, you can have it. You can have that if you go with WordPress. One of the great things about portability is WordPress is fully portable. So you'll need a hosting company to look after. That's kind of like the place where your WordPress website would live. But if you don't like your hosting company, you can just take your WordPress site and you can go to any other hosting company you prefer. So that's one of the things I love about it. Also, your WordPress site can grow with you. So as your wellness business grows, you might have additional things. You might even have a shop that you want to add. And yes, you can do that with Wix, but as I said, you know, it's a lot more money. They'll charge you for having that e-commerce. With WordPress, you've got WooCommerce, which is a free plugin. So you can have a shop on your site for free. So as your business changes, WordPress can really grow with you, which I absolutely love. And also the flexibility and the amazing amount of plugins that can be put into your WordPress site that will help you manage your events, that will help you have, you know, take bookings online from clients, that will allow you to have intake forms for clients that kind of all sit on the site and work together. The amount of options you've got, fantastic. And actually WordPress is changing now, and there are things called page builders. So you may think, well, I can't touch WordPress because it's all coding, it's all like HTML and stuff that I don't understand. Actually, there's a couple of really, really good page builders which are really gearing towards that what you see is what you get type functionality that Wix gives you. The two that I use in particular are called Elementor and Divi, and they are revolutionizing the world of WordPress and making it a lot more accessible to, you know, first-time DIYers, you know. Yeah. So that I think it's fantastic for that.
That's great, because I think that was one of the big turn-offs for me, certainly when I was setting up my blog, and this is like 5-6 years ago now. A lot of people were saying you need to have a basic coding understanding, and actually each little thing, a lot of people that I helped would say, I'm trying to just, you know, change the menus on my website or do so, and they're like, I go down a rabbit warren of trying to, well, then you have to do this, and then you have to get another person to help you with this, and I was like, I want a platform where I can just go, yeah, I can just drag it in or just change that. You know, I don't want to have to understand the code of it. And that's
you
great.
don't want to see, what's going on behind the scenes.
No, exactly.
Because it's painful.
That's it. We don't want painful. There's enough painful things about your own business. Having a website should feel really easy and fun and enjoyable. And it's not to say like it's always a new skill, but it should feel a bit more intuitive than like a whole new skill set that you're going to have.
Definitely. And people that are building things like Elementor and Divi, they're really taking that into account and making it a lot easier just to pick up and start to run with it. They're great. Disadvantages of WordPress, exactly like you just mentioned, is that learning curve that can really be quite frightening, and you do end up going down this rabbit hole of coding and stuff like that. If you don't know about these easier ways to do it, you can really get lost in WordPress. Other things with WordPress, little things can break. But Google is your friend, so that's something I love about WordPress.
Because it's so well used and it is open source, there does mean there is a lot of help out there.
And also another disadvantage is that hackers and people that want to install malware onto your website, WordPress is can be an open door to people like that. I've never heard of anybody, and I could be wrong, but I've never heard of anybody having their Wix site hacked. So that's something that WordPress can open you up to, but again, it's an easy fix. It's not the end of the world. It sounds quite scary being hacked, but it's not the end of the world. It is cost effective, but it might not be the best use of your time. So you might think, oh, actually, you know, WordPress sounds quite cheap now that Lisa has told me all this, but it might not be the best use of your time. And I think with everything in this type of business, you're wearing all these different hats. And sometimes it's best to stay in your zone of genius, really.
Yeah, I think there's a false economy there, isn't it? When you look at them all, and if you just compared on price and you're like, I'm just going to go for the cheapest thing, actually the trade-off is there's a huge amount of your time. And if you don't value that and cost that in, then actually it's not a good value investment for your business. You're better to pay a little bit more and get something that's more flexible and takes less of your time, and like you say, leaves you in your zone of genius instead.
100%. Yeah,
lovely. Right, Sammy, let's move on to another option, which I know you and I love. I've always built my websites on, and I'm a big fan of, and even Lisa is keen to hear more about, just for comparison, Squarespace. What do you think is the advantages and the disadvantages of Squarespace in comparison to Wix and WordPress?
It's funny because obviously the platforms I work on is kind of similar to what Lisa just said in terms of that kind of the difference between Wix and WordPress and something like Squarespace and ShowIt. But funny enough, my journey, I actually started off with a WordPress website at the very beginning, and I sort of did all the research and was like, what's the best, I'm going to make a good go of it from the beginning. And everyone sort of said WordPress was the one. But I actually kind of ended up doing like a little mini course to sort of learn about it. And I struggled with it, to be honest. The back end for me wasn't so easy to use. And as Lisa, you pointed out, kind of the little breaks and kind of always having to like refresh and update the plugins and things. It was quite hard work for a real beginner. And so when I moved over to Squarespace, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing in comparison. For me, I'm a very visual person, and I definitely come at web design from a more designer visual aspect rather than a techie coding. So for me, it was just brilliant because I think it's very intuitive. I didn't have to really do any course as such. It was just, obviously, Vicky, you were an immense help with your sort of Squarespace knowledge, but you can pick up bits, and their tutorials and support is amazing. So very quickly you can get started. But to be honest, I'm one of those people, I just like to kind of dive in, play around, and just sort of experiment. And you can really do that with Squarespace with sort of real time view of what the website's going to look like. And that's what I love. I didn't really like kind of putting information in the back end and then kind of going and seeing how's that turned out, and you're like, oh no, that's in the right place, wrong place. I'll have to go back and work out, you know, how to fix it. Whereas with Squarespace, you know, as you're typing or if you're copy and pasting information in, you can literally see how the formatting is. And I think one of the best things, and particularly for people that are starting out, is you can't design a bad looking website on Squarespace because of the way they've structured the templates they give you. You know, it kind of ticks all the boxes that it should, but you can also make it really look your own. So with some changes in with your branding colors, you know, I've recently just finished a website where it doesn't look anything like the template. But you just use it as a bit of a guide, and then you tweak it for your own use. So it gives you the structure. And I love that you can get that consistency across your whole website, which you mentioned with Wix isn't so easy to do, or it gives you too much free reign. Whereas with Squarespace, I think it has a good amount of structure and, you know, not being too overly flexible in a way that, you know, your buttons will be one color, you know, you can change the settings, and then that will change it across the whole site. So it's not like you've got to change it every page and then, oh no, that's different. And then, you know, you publish it and you know, see that something you forgot to go and update something on a different page. You know, it changes everything across the whole site. So whether that be your branding colors, you know, for different sections, different headings, and
like I did this when I changed my brand over. You can just change in one place in Squarespace the colors, the buttons, the fonts, and then it just changes it across the whole site, and everything's consistent. It was so easy to be able to update the brand like that.
Yeah. And because you can see it in real time, you know, sometimes you think, oh yeah, that header would look lovely in that kind of, you know, one of my colors. And then you go back and you think, oh no, actually that the readability is not great. And you can just easily go back and tweak it. So you can just see in real time. And I quite like playing around with that. And then, you know, you discover sort of new things. So I think kind of ease of use and just the back end is very easy to follow. You know, you kind of can find whatever you need to if you click around. But obviously there is that help there if you need it. So I think it's very easy to update and maintain yourself, which I think is really important, because obviously your website should never be static. It should always be, you know, having fresh content added on. And the last thing you want is either being reliant on somebody else or, you know, too much, or being kind of scared to go in and update something thinking you might break it. I think it's pretty impossible to break in. Well, I haven't broken anything in Squarespace yet.
No, me neither. What would you say then are the disadvantages, and maybe some of the reasons that you then started to explore ShowIt?
Yeah, I mean, because I am quite creative and visually led, I found that particularly for, you know, if you're working with a slightly more advanced brand, there is restrictions. And because it is so easy to use and you've got the drag and drop blocks and things like that, it can start to look a little bit blocky if you're not careful. And I think, you know, there are, you know, if you really kind of want to unleash your creativity without having to do loads of bespoke coding, because on Squarespace you can really go to town, but you need a lot of code and a lot of knowledge that will take a lot of time. So with ShowIt, I think that's where it really kind of grabbed me, was that you can literally, it's still drag and drop, so the functionality is still quite easy. You still don't need to know a load of coding. Again, obviously there are areas where you can add in some extra coding for very specific things that you want, but you can, it's limitless in its creativity. And I think that really allows you, when you are a more established business, particularly if you're quite a visual business as well, to really be able to create a nice flow and really story tell, because you can have things that are not too structured. You know, you've got a lot more freedom to actually put things where you want them. And another disadvantage with Squarespace is you cannot change the mobile version of your website. I mean, it's great, again, that it automatically optimizes it, which is brilliant if, you know, you don't want to have to fiddle around with creating two sort of separate websites as such. So again, when you're starting, it's great. But then if you start to sort of add in some of your own little things, like your own banners, and you'll see that they don't always resize appropriately, and that can be a bit frustrating. And again, you've got to kind of add code in to make sure that so if you don't want to go down that road, whereas in ShowIt you can custom design your mobile site, and I think that's so important now, where so many more people are using mobile to look at websites and to research and to get information, that really you want it properly optimized. And so that means you can just take some sections out if it doesn't really work in mobile compared to your, desktop version of your website. Yeah. So you still, it's still very consistent, it's still cohesive, but you're just making those tweaks that really optimizes it for a really good user experience, which I think, there's only going to be more and more demand for that kind of level of design.
Yeah, amazing. So I feel like we've touched then on the 4 different builders that we see people using: Wix, WordPress, Squarespace, and ShowIt now as well. What would you both say, Lisa, we'll start with you, are the kind of factors? We've talked quite a lot about the different factors that health and wellness business owners should consider when they're deciding which of these platforms to go with. Like, what would you say are the most important deciding factors on which platform is right for you?
Okay, yeah, so I'd say price and flexibility. Price, because whilst you might be looking at something that's very cost effective, I think that often it's easy to think of a website as an expense. It's like once you've paid that money, you're just never going to see that money back. But actually, your website is it's an investment, and it needs to be a tool that's going to work hard for you. So the whole purpose of it is to bring in clients and customers. So it's well worth considering it in broader terms than rather just that initial cost alone. Flexibility, because what's going to allow you to grow? What you might need now is you might just be starting out. It might be very simple and very plain, but what Sammy and I have touched upon today will hopefully give you an idea of how these different platforms might allow your business to grow, what you're going to need next year, what you're going to need in the next 5 years. So I think it's always worth looking ahead as well before we make that initial decision.
Yeah, great. I love that. And I think it's really important. I was talking to a client yesterday about this, and it, in the short term, oh, well, I've already invested a lot in a lot of things, and, I just want something that's simple and cheap. And it's, yeah, but like you said, this is an asset for your business. I've always invested in my website. Even when I was blogging for free, I knew this was going to be my home online. This was going to be a tool that I was going to use to do everything, really, to communicate everything, to sell things, to be my home online. So I knew it needed to have that longevity. So we've got to have faith in ourselves as well, and our businesses, that this is a good investment and it's going to pay off. Yeah. So yeah, I love that you touched on that. Sammy, what would you say are the kind of biggest deciding factors for people when they're deciding on which website platform to go with?
Well, I totally agree with what Lisa said. I think that is they're very good points and very important for people. I think really it's what you feel comfortable with using, because it's quite easy, if you're kind of doing the research and you can get swayed by, oh, this, I really should be doing this, or I should be doing that, or everyone's saying this is the best platform. But actually, at the end of the day, if you go in and think, this doesn't feel right for me, then I would say, you're much better off going with a platform that you feel comfortable with. Yeah, there's always going to be a bit of a learning curve for anybody. But something that actually feels good for you, that you actually enjoy and look forward to going in and updating your website, and it not being like, oh God, and you put it off and you don't get round to it, because that's not going to do your business any good at all. Yeah. So I think what's great is that a lot of the platforms do have like a kind of 2-week free trial, so you can go in, have a little play around, see, what the kind of functionality is like without any commitment. And then you can at least, and you don't even have to really go into designing your own thing. You can just use a template and move things around and see, especially in Squarespace, I know that's super easy to do, and just see like, yeah, this actually feels like a really good fit for me. And also I think having a platform that makes things quite simple for you, particularly when you're starting out. So again, Squarespace, you can, have your domain name. I think you get the first year free when you sign up to the subscription. So that's quite a nice little bonus. They're really good on their plans. The money doesn't suddenly jump up. It kind of stays the same year on year. And, you can sort of add on things later on. So again, don't sort of think, right, I need the blog up and running. I need a scheduling you know, calendar. I need, everybody else has got this. Like, just concentrate on what you need, but be aware of that those things are available to you as you grow. And things like having included like the security certificate and things like that, people might not be so aware of that you need that. And again, sort of Squarespace, it has it all included. You just need to toggle it on. So stuff like that can kind of take some of those really scary things away. So yeah, having a good play around and just what's good for you, I think, is a really good start.
I think it's so important to me when I'm telling anybody, and I do for all the people that I help, if they're doing quite a lot of business online, that say a website, I do think is critical, that it has to be, like you say, something they feel comfortable to use. And that's why I don't say, when people come to me and say, I've already got a Wix website, I've already got this, I'm like, great, if you are happy with it, if you can update it, if you can change the pictures and the text, if you can add a page in, you know, and that's great. Like, I'm not telling you should change, but you need to have that comfort with it, because like you said, we don't want it to be a static website that you're terrified. I do know someone who had their website built and she's like, I am terrified of doing anything on it in case it breaks. And I was like, I don't want anyone to feel like that. It needs to be something that you feel comfortable with doing. So yeah, having that level of comfort is important. Great. If anyone is watching live or watching on the replay, do add any questions in the comments, because both Lisa and Sammy certainly are in the Facebook group, and this is going also out on the YouTube channel, so they can answer any questions that you have about website building. Before we finish then, I'd love to know from both of your experiences watching people build websites and with your own experience, what do you see as the biggest blocks to starting and publishing a website? Like, if there's people watching that are like, I've always thought I should have one, or I've kind of messed around with a few, but I've never actually got it done. Like, what do you think is going on in here that blocks people getting a website done? Lisa, we start with you.
Yeah, I think it's perfectionism for sure. I've been very guilty of this myself, absolutely. But if you just think, I want to get it just right before I hit that go live, you know, I think that can stop you launching your site altogether. I think it's important just to help you understand that the websites they blossom with you, and they grow and they change. And as Sammy was saying, you know, Google likes you changing things anyway. So it's a win-win, really. It likes to see that you're updating your site. So don't worry about getting it just perfect. It will change. It's always a work in progress. Your website is never done. So don't worry about getting it just perfect.
Yeah, I agree. Hit publish, get it out there. It's more likely to attract you customers when it's live than it's not live. So you're best to get it out there. And yeah, you can keep tinkering with it. I ended up doing it as like a kind of reward to myself. You do something tough in your business, sort your accounts out today, and then I can go and have a little fiddle, change some pictures around, like do some nice fun things, you know, creative things on my website. So yeah, there's always nice things to do there. I agree. Perfectionism, definitely a big block. Sammy, what would you say is a big blocker for people when they're starting and publishing a website?
I think it is the sort of fear around tech and seeing it as a really big, scary monster to tackle in one go. And my advice there is to really, you know, break it down, start small, start with just what you need, just focus on what you need, not what everyone else is doing. You know, if you're not ready to blog yet, don't worry, add your blog on later. You know, you can add those pages in, you know, even if you just have one basic page just to start with, just to get something up that you can direct people to, and they can, you know, have your contact details on there, then that's fine. You know, don't worry about kind of doing because you can get quite carried away when you start doing the research. Oh, that sounds interesting. Oh yeah, I need one of those. And, you know, it suddenly starts to mount up and you think, oh my God, where do I even start with it? You know, I don't even know. So I think just, you know, be easy on yourself and just start with the very basics. You know, if you're doing it yourself, and then just, you know, add on as you grow.
Yeah, and that's definitely what I did. It was, I just wanted a blog. So it's like, okay, what platform am I going to go with? And I just had the personal plan on Squarespace, cheapest, you know, 17 quid a month or something, just blog on it. And then it was like, okay, I want to add on now, you know, to be able to buy things. So I wanted to sell online, you know, workshops. Okay, so I'm going to add on the commerce plan. And, you know, that was a year, like, no, 2.5 years later. And then it was, okay, I'm going to do my scheduling through here. So now I'm going to add on the scheduling tool. Like you say, I knew it had the flexibility to do that, but I didn't need that all immediately on day one. So I just, grew with it and knew and felt comfortable with the platform so I could add those things on. Lovely. Thank you both so much. I love chatting websites. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So this is total geek out. And like I say, if anyone watching this back does have any questions or anything that's come up for you or any blocks that you're having about website building, please pop them in the comments. This is going live. It's not, unfortunately, not worked on LinkedIn, but in the Facebook group and on YouTube. So we'll pick up any comments there. Lisa, if anyone wants to come and find you, or have you got anything useful that these guys watching could tap into, where should they go and find you?
Yeah, so I'm at www.lisakent.com, and they can, if they want the list of what I've talked about today, actually, the comparison between Wix and WordPress, I'd quite happily share my notes with them. They can email me at info@lisakent.com and I'll give them today's notes. But on my website, there's actually a website project planner that they can sign up and get for free. So if they are embarking on doing their own website, this just gives you the prompts, the things that you're going to need, get you kind of all structured and planned in place before you start actually tinkering on the screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Sammy, where can people come and find you if they're interested in finding more about what you do and the platforms you use?
Yeah, my website is www.thenutritionalpalette.com. And yeah, there's a few blog posts on there that might sort of tap into some of the things we've spoken about today, so might be useful. And you can also find me on Instagram, so that is at the Nutritional Palette.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We all love chatting websites, so come and connect with us, come and talk to us, come and let us know if you've got wobbles or worries or woes about it, because we want to help and we want to see more people having great websites go live, because they do so much for you and your business, get you found and really elevate the professionalism of what you're doing. So yeah, get it done. Just start now, as I would say. Thank you both so much. Have a lovely Christmas and festive break, and we'll see you again on the other side. See you in the new year.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.